With that, we'll close this item and move on to the next, which is our 6.4, consideration of a resolution authorizing application for grant funding under the Regional Climate Collaboratives Program as administered by the Strategic Growth Council. B, consideration of a draft partnership agreement for the Climate Safe Lake Project and authorization of designee to sign. And it looks like Vice Chair Pyska will be working with the staff to present this.
So this grant opportunity came to the Risk Reduction Authority, and a little late, we decided to go for it. It was in a conversation in July, and we knew it was going to be a lot of work, and we got a late start, but it just speaks so much to the work that we've been doing, the work that we want to do, so we just committed to it. And so we've spent about the last 2.5 months working as a big team, a collaborative with voices from all over the region to build this plan. And what's so amazing about the work that's come out of this is it doesn't really, I mean, it does matter. It matters if we get this grant, but there's another opportunity. There's round 2 in June. But the work that we've done to build the plan is going to be our roadmap going forward. And it's a lot of work that Supervisor Simon and I have been doing to build the Risk Reduction Authority, to build the collaborative, to be in the position where we could do this work. So I'm really excited. And so we'll go through the slides. So this is the California Strategic Growth Council's Regional Climate Collaborative Program. And so we're calling our project Climate Safe Lake. So this is what the program is looking for. It was created under Senate Bill 170. This is for building climate adaptation, resiliency through planning, research, capacity building, restoration, and sustainable infrastructure. And what's really important to this work is that it's community rooted, it's cross-sectional, and that you're building the social infrastructure to serve all people. And the eligible applicants are Native American tribes, community-based organizations, joint powers authorities, local governments, nonprofits, and organizations. And this collaborative is all of those. And it's for a 3-year term up to $1.75 million. And so the next slide is, this is our Risk Reduction Authority. This organization chart was one of the exercises that we needed to do to prepare the application. And we wanted to make sure that we've got interconnectivity with the community groups, which are the blue circles, to the center of the RRA collaborative, to the directors of the RRA, which has been expanded to water districts, watershed protection district, tribal nations, county of Lake, city of Lakeport, city of Clear Lake, and fire protection district. So again, this is just another really important piece that helped us all in putting together the application. So the mission of the RRA is to proactively mitigate all climate or all disasters that are climate related. And the vision is that all county communities have the capacity to co-manage the many climate change related risks they share. So next slide. In May of 2021, we took the steps to expand the RRA. And we had talked about expanding the seats to include the cities and the tribal nations and the water purveyors, but we also took the steps sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service. We brought in the CMAT team, the Community Mitigation Assistance Team, which was the first one done in California. And they came virtually because it was during COVID, and they did a 2-week extensive review of all of our mitigation documents and resources. They had interviews and workshops. And at the end of that period, they gave us this report full of findings and recommendations and toolboxes. And that really has become the roadmap of how we've been moving forward together. But the guiding principles was collaborate and mitigate. So work together, be strategic, know boundaries, help underserved populations, and proactively protect to prevent losses. So that's what guided us through our application. The big question for this grant is, a regional collaborative. What is the region? And this is a highly competitive grant. So there's going to be 50 applicants for probably less than 10 awards. And when we met with the team from the Strategic Growth Council, they were like, what do you mean you're just choosing Lake County as your region? The idea that through this legislation was to build larger collaboratives and regions. But these are all the reasons why we say our county is the region. We are geographically isolated. These are all things that we know and we talk about all the time. But we have been left out of collaboratives that could have been really helpful to us because we're not coastal and we're not valley. We don't fit into any of those boxes. And what we're doing is outside the box. So we don't have the economic connection to the other counties. We don't have an inter-county trade. We don't have those things those bonds that tie us to other counties and regions. We're our own air quality district. We have the unique experience of being devastated by so many fires. We also have the shared trauma of those fires that have pulled us together. And we've got this, we're susceptible to clusters of disaster types. So we've got wildfires, flooding, heat, drought, and earthquakes. We've all of those. But we're building on the success that we've been able to accomplish together by building out these collaboratives and working together. So that's the reason why we decided to choose the county, small c, as the region. Next slide. So when we look at the county, small c, as the region, that includes the county government, the cities, and all of the tribal nations. And what we want to do is build a climate action plan that is across all of those boundaries and can be co-managed. So that's our second goal, is create the climate action plan. The first one is build the RRA collaborative partner capacity to plan and implement projects. So we have been building that capacity within the RRA, but we have a lot. We need a lot more to be able to do the work that we want to do. The third strategy is the woody waste biomass utilization and bioenergy and biochar deployment plan. That we'll look at these in a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation. Establish a partner assistance fund and establish a fire resiliency standing committee. So next slide is our first strategy. So this is where we really build that capacity. We know we have to be very selective in this county when we go after grants, because it's really difficult to even find grant writers and this kind of support. And I will say that even to find the grant writer, Amari Roden, who did this work, we had to look really hard. We had to find someone outside of the county, and it was, a lot of people looked at this grant and said it was really complicated and they wanted to pass on it. But we did find someone who was willing to take that work, but it's hard to find those resources. So these are the funded positions. We're going to have a climate safe project coordinator who will work in the admin office under our climate resiliency officer, who is going to be hired soon. And then community outreach coordinator and RRA collaborative support team, and those will be funded through NCO. That's actually 3 different positions. So the community outreach coordinator will be a full-time position who will be going out into the community and getting the information, finding the needs, bringing them back, and really being that more than a conduit, but that outreach. Then we're going to have a biomass facilitator that's going to be with the Scotts Valley Band of Pomos. So the CMAT recommendation here is build local sustainable capacity for climate-related mitigation, adaptation, and resiliency. These are pulled directly from our CMAT report that we've been using as a guide. Strategy 2, next slide. Create a regional climate action plan. And this is where the co-management of our land through a climate action plan to be developed for all the governments and by all the governments within the region. So this is all the tribal nations, the City of Clear Lake, City of Lakeport, County of Lake. So that CMAT recommendation was to work across all boundaries in the all hands, all lands approach. So once we have this climate action plan developed, we're going to have priority projects that are going to come out of that. And that's where that capacity building of strategy 1 comes in. Once we have projects identified, we have to have the strategy to implementation. So strategy 3 is create a woody biomass waste utilization and bioenergy deployment plan. This is work that Scotts Valley Tribe has already started, but it really needs to be continued, and we need to have that connectivity to what's happening out in the communities as far as vegetation management, fuel mitigation projects, all of those things. This map is I was really surprised to see this map. So we had the LIDAR presentation at the Risk Reduction Authority, and that conversation was here a week or 2 ago. And the consultants that are putting together the LIDAR package did satellite data, and this is the loss of vegetation between 2020 and 2022 in our county from satellite data. And I can tell you that the south half of the county, that data lines up exactly with the CAL FIRE flyover data. So this has been pulled from satellites. The caveat is it hasn't been ground truthed. But like I said, the bottom half of the picture, it exactly lines up with what we've been getting the data with tree mortality. So this is significant. We all know that we have this problem with fuels and dying trees and all the mitigation work that we have to do, and we don't have a disposal strategy. So that's what this third strategy is for. And the CMAT recommendation was in the report: identify biomass disposal needs and expand resources. Okay, strategy 4 is establish a partner assistance fund. Grant writing support, I talked about that. We don't have equity across the board when it comes to community groups, organizations, trying to get grants to do the work that needs to be done. And so we need to figure out how to solve that. And so that's what this partner assistance fund is. Grant writing support, project development and implementation support, meeting facilitation, data collection, and up to 15% of the grant funds can be set aside for projects that are yet to be determined or identified in our climate action plan. So it does leave us with that room to take in what we learn and to plan using those points. So the CMAT recommendation here was partner with existing groups to apply for and administer mitigation grants for the community. And then strategy 5 is establish a Risk Reduction Authority Fire Resiliency Standing Committee. This is something that we did at our last risk reduction meeting. And this is going to be facilitated by Clerk. This is something Clerk has been working on, thinking about. We've just really been thinking about all of these things for the last couple of years. How do we keep our CWPP a living document? How do we implement the projects that are in there? How do we update that? And so this is what's come out of that conversation. So Clerk will be meeting with this committee will meet with the Fire Safe Council that meets monthly. And this is, again, to kind of take down those silos, reduce redundancy, get everybody together. So these meetings are going to rotate throughout the region so that each region communities have direct impact on, or direct input on those wildfire protection plan projects. So there's going to be partner updates, events, outreach, and the CWPP project planning. And this was, again, a CMAT recommendation, assign responsibility for the CWPP monitoring, oversight, implementation, tracking, and collaborative revisions and updates. So this was a need that we have been trying to figure out how to meet. And through many, many conversations and meetings, we've kind of gotten to this plan. So the structure of the grant is the managing stakeholder will be the county. And the reason we have the county as the managing stakeholder is because we're bringing on this climate resiliency officer, and the county is going to be responsible for the fiscal and grant reporting, and that's going to be through that climate officer. And then also that climate officer and the staff person who's written into this grant will be working with the consultant to develop that climate action plan and going out to all the communities and governments and you know, really getting everybody's feedback before adoption. We're going to follow the CWPP update process that we've been doing, so that the county is going to hold that part of the project. The co-applicants, the Risk Reduction Authority is going to be the implementation body, the collaborative that makes the decisions on where the funding will go, although the county will hold the funding. And then Scotts Valley will take on the biomass utilization plan. North Coast Opportunities is going to be the capacity support for the grant strategies. And Clerk is going to take the Fire Resiliency Standing Committee and CWPP update or implementation. So that's how the workflow will go. And then these are all the letters of support that we're getting after the fire, Blue Ribbon Committee, Terra, Clerk. American Red Cross has a community risk reduction program right now, which is pretty incredible. There are eight communities in the country that have been chosen for this proactive work through American Red Cross. So they've built a team, and Lake County was chosen as one of those 8. And so they're a partner on this too. We've got North Coast Opportunities, and then we have our state and federal electeds supporting this. And then our last slide is I just want to give a huge thank you to this grant development team. I can't even tell you how many hours per week we put into this since probably the beginning of August. So Mari Roden is our grant writer, and she lives in Ukiah, and she accepted this task and really, you know, I don't think we could have asked for a better partner here. This grant was funded through our admin office because this is work that's going to be aligning with our climate officer. So North Coast Opportunities, Scotts Valley Band of Pomos, Middletown Rancheria, the environmental directors were at these meetings frequently, American Red Cross, Clear Lake Environmental Research Center, Stiegler Springs, City of Lakeport and City of Clear Lake both sent representatives to multiple meetings, and their feedback is also incorporated in this. So it's pretty incredible. And then our administration office just did a lot, and really grateful for all that work. So that is my presentation, and take questions or comments or what.
Just a quick clarification. You said this grant was funded by the County of Lake. Can you explain what that means?
$5,000 for the grant writer, is that what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Came out of the admin office.
Okay, I wasn't quite clear on what that meant.
Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, I just want to thank, all the volunteer organizations. As you know, the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority, when it was created as a JP here in the county, was some heavy lifting. And I obviously need to thank Anita Grant, former CAO, but it was a vision of the board that was brought together. So we've taken a lot of strides and steps. This is just one more. Having a climate action plan is so important right now. As we move forward over the next decades, that we're going to be dealing with issues, as we all know, that are affecting us every day. You've got to have a plan in place. This board has been long-term vision with, we're doing our road management plan. We're putting all these other plans together as we move forward. our green energy resilience plan as we're moving forward. Some of those things we just talked about in the budget, but this is just one more big step that's going to help us move forward. I also want to highlight that the CMAT process that we went through was the first one in California's history to be done. And that was a lot of work. I want to thank all the organizations, everyone who did the interviews. That was like a 2-week process of meetings every day on how we're going to build this collaborative. So each and every month, that we meet, that we have these conversations, we're constantly trying to implement that CMAT plan and move forward. And this is just one more step in that process. We've been successful with the Resiliency Officer Grant that we got through the Jumpstart program. And over the next, 24 months, hopefully we're just going to continue this hard work. So I want to thank everybody. Obviously, Jessica, I want to thank you for your just dedication on this one. Like you said, we were told, nope, can't do it, not enough time, but at least it's here at the board for the discussion. And hopefully we are successful. I think we're starting to do a good job of position Lake County of being our own region, because it is. It's very frustrating, on the LIDAR conversation. It was just approved for the North Coast, but we're not part of the North Coast. We're not part of the Valley, as Jessica said. And really putting the eye on Lake County in this unique area that we live in is so important. So, obviously in complete support of this as we move forward. Also looking to help us just keep implementing the CMAT conversations that were had for years. How do we continue this work, boots on the ground? And it's not the county doing the heavy lifting. When the CMAT came through, we are here as the organization with the JPA to support all the organizations doing the work on the ground. That is our Firewise communities, that's our fire safe councils, all of these things that have been developed here in Lake County to do the work that needs to be done. Each and every community member, which we have a lot of dedicated folks out there doing work, communicating with their neighbors, understanding what needs to be done to help protect all of us. So hopefully we'll be able to move this forward today and hopefully we're successful. But the work's not done once it's passed. It just begins. And obviously, throughout the process, while this is being analyzed, we'll continue to just talk to the right partners and try and move this thing forward. So the great thing that I love up there that I've seen is the collaboration. All the governments in the county, all the organizations working together. And that's something.
It is.
I'm telling you, we're starting to really get that message out there that you can't do this alone. You can't do it as a county government. It's got to be everybody together. And that is the collaboration and the equity conversation that we're having each month. That's what I have to say today. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you, Supervisor Spati?
So the application itself, or the grant itself, I think has a lot of merit. We need to be better positioned to deal with the future and the things that we know are coming or the things that we're not quite certain are coming. We need to be better positioned. We've all obviously, in hindsight, have been trying to catch up and dealing with the changes in our climate rather than being prepared and set up for dealing with the worst of the worst, even though I think that we're always going to have to deal with the steps back. We saw what happened in Florida. They've upgraded I don't know how many times because of all the storms that they've dealt with. We're going to upgrade how many times because of the fires that we deal with, and it's still going to be an impact when we have fires in the future. So there's no solution, but we can mitigate the impacts for sure. So these are important. What I do have some problems with, and it's a huge concern for me, is what is the level of capacity that we're asking staff? Because I get very confused as to where the line ends for the RRA and when the line starts for the county. There's a lot of blur in between. And we have a grant as a county for a resiliency officer. And it just seems like, is that officer supposed to work for the county? Is that officer supposed to work for the RRA? There's a lot of overlap. And then inside the resolution that we're looking at, it says county staff county will provide staff up until the end of the grant, but there's no I guess there's no limitations. It just seems like we're supposed to say yes without actually knowing exactly what we're saying yes to. There's highlighted strategies and there's highlighted programs, but I don't see the grant application to know exactly what we're promising. I have concerns about creating a group that comes from an RRA that I don't know what the backstories or the conversations are, because I can't get there, because that would be a Brown Act violation. But like, for example, I pulled 5.7 today because we didn't go out to bid. We say we want to work with everybody, but this is a very specific group of people that will be part of this grant with what I believe are promises to give them money rather than going through an open RFP process to say, are you going to be the one to help us with doing these activities that we would like to align with in this grant? Because I don't know that they are the best positioned folks, and maybe if we did an RFP, we would know, because that's what the RFP process is all about, is to have transparency and to be aware of what's happening. I have respect for every single group that's on there, from NCO to clerk to Scotts Valley Band, Scotts Valley Band. But at the same time, are they the best position to do with things that we're looking to do? I don't know. But what we have in front of us is a deadline of 3 days from now to submit the application. I don't know what the application specifically says other than the summaries that I see. And I know that it's going to ask a lot from staff at the county to do something that I thought the RRA was positioned to do. And what I do a lot of times is I'm looking at Supervisor Simon and myself are on a JPA for LTA and APC, and I just see some discrepancies, and I'm not certain I understand how the RRA is sustainable in the future without Lake County continuously providing staff or funding to make it happen. And I struggle with this because it's already set as what it is, and I don't necessarily agree with how it's set. I'm concerned about the sustainability of our staff working on this, taking away from all the other work that we're doing. And I have my concerns on how the RRA is functioning because of the fact that it's so reliant on us to help them make the things happen that they need. And we need these things, but this partnership, I just struggle with. And I feel like I have more open questions than answers, and saying yes to this is difficult for me, other than the fact that the idea behind the grant and the grant opportunity, I think, has merit. But I feel this should have, I don't know why it got pulled last week. I don't know what changed between last week and now, because then we could have maybe had a conversation and brought back more material before the 10/7 deadline. But it's hard for having a conversation happening in a group that only specific people are allowed to be a part of, and then only have a day to have a discussion about this on how we move forward. I mean, last week we had a conversation, or 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago we had a conversation about a lease for something that's in here. This was not brought up. We have Part B here, which is a partnership agreement, and yet that partnership agreement was not mentioned in the leasing of the land, which has everything to do with this grant, only to find out that they can't even do the project on the land that we leased them. And so I just feel like some of this has not been vetted appropriately. I get it that maybe it was a fast track to make sure that we meet the deadline, but I'm uncomfortable with some of the details in here because it's just not, it's not certain to me exactly what I would be saying yes to.
So there's a lot to respond to there. Trying to figure out where to even start. I will let CAO Parker talk about the county's role in this. The RRA is always going to have county support, just like it's going to have support from all the other partners. And that is a conversation that we are having this month on the financial contributions from each director and each partner for sustainability. So that is one of the conversations that we've been having since we expanded the group. But the county will always have a piece of this because we're a part of it. And
that needs to be a decision, not a statement.
well, we're a partner. We're part of the partnership. So all of the partners are going to be contributing. But I will let CAO Parker talk about the staff implications on what these new positions will be. You know, it's not something that you're part of, and sometimes, you know, you just have to trust other people's work and respect that. And, you know, this is conceptual, and we're going to have a conversation next, or in November, at the RRA about the woody biomass project. This is the concept that we need. We need this strategy. We know that Scotts Valley is a partner in the RRA. They've already been doing a lot of the work, and so we want to flesh that out. We want to see how we get to where implementation is and where it can positively affect our communities, because we have this problem and there is a solution. And everything in between is not yet defined, and that will happen if and when we get this grant or as the project gets developed. Trying to remember the other points that you had, but I'll just pause and let CAO Parker talk about the staffing part of this.
Yes, as far as the CCRO, or the Chief Climate Resiliency Officer, they will be working not only with the RRA and those different partners, but with town halls, tribal health, medical, the community colleges. They will doing that outreach to not only educate, but to be informed on what the needs are in the community. So that's it's one small element of what that person does. Because the primary goal, the initial goal for this grant, for the CCRO, is to actually develop a resiliency plan. And my thought process is that first you have to do a vulnerability assessment. I'm looking to Ms. Turner, because it was her great idea. That will also help with the safety element, but also with the resiliency plan, and then lead into the information needed for the climate protection plan. So there's many different moving parts to what the CCRO, it's not just the RRA. Mm-hmm. But that is the one, and probably the quickest way for that person to reach all those different partners is in that singular meeting and being in attendance to that meeting.
And the analyst, that's part of this grant that will be county staff. That position was part of the Jumpstart grant, which we were asked to back out, but it's also a match to that grant. So that's why we're including county support within this grant as a funded position for 3 years. To go out, to be working with the RRA and be this climate safe project coordinator. What were your other questions, or do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just add, you know, about the JPA. Obviously, the formation of the JPA, it goes through a growth process, and that's currently where we're at. That's where the CMAT, hey, you need to expand to all governments in the county. So we've taken one of those steps. I just want to, you know, just kind of help answer a little bit of your question on, you know, where that line is. Right now, there's support from admin office, from the county, those types of things. I really put it in the same category of the Workforce Alliance of the North Bay. The Workforce Alliance in North Bay, where JPA, where the county obviously is committed financially, but also myself and Jessica sit on that. I've sat with Jim Steele and on that board as it's gone through, a growth, and also EJ, as we've gone through this process. So to say that it's always going to be supported completely by the county, that is something that we've got to work through here. You know, since I came on board in my last 6 years when we joined the JPA, the Workforce Alliance North Bay, all the workforce was sponsored by the County of Napa for the Workforce Alliance in North Bay. That's how it was created. Now we've gone through a growth process where we've hired an executive director directly. We have the own employees of the Workforce Alliance in North Bay. And realistically, eventually, that's where the RRA needs to build to. That is absolutely sustainable on its own. I think with the funding coming down through the state, other organization, well, basically from the state, that's how it's funded through the Fed and the states for job creation. I think as we move forward with this climate resiliency stuff that's going to be going on over the next couple of decades, there will be direct funding that will be able to come into there. So there's a growth process, Bruno, that we're working towards. I think what may help in answering some of those questions. We do. The Brown Act obviously limits us. We do our best. We are going to be doing some reports here from the RRA directly to the board as we move forward, so everybody can be involved with that. But the work that's being done, we kind of have done it in a silo. I've been on since the implementation with the JPA as we're making and moving these steps. And maybe that's something we need to look at the board where, hey, if you're interested in being on there, that we get you on the board to have those conversations. Obviously, that means it'll take you away from some of the other stuff you may be working on. But this is a big issue for the county as we move forward. So I don't think there's simple answers. I hear you clearly, though, about getting those lines drawn as we move forward. But this is a part of the step in that process to help us do those things that we need to do. And I know you're very data-driven as we're moving forward. But I think we can bring clarity as we're moving forward here with each and every one of these incremental steps that we're taking. With the resiliency officer, with this climate action grant, and we may not be successful, so we might be back at the table in June, and we can get those answers that you need. But hopefully that helps a little bit, because we are part of JPAs that do have financial contributions from the county. Not so much staff at this point, but this is a growth process for the RRA as we move forward. So that's what I really just wanted to lay out that path. And it took 6 years for the Workforce Alliance in North Bay. We kind of made that transition about 18 months ago, brought on Bruce Wilson as the executive director. He got hired away, I think, from Napa is where he was working, and now he works directly for the RRA. And that's, kind of standalone. So there's that growth process that we're going through, and it's going to be unique how it ends up. But there may be always a financial contribution of some sort coming from the county, but hopefully the capacity building we're doing here as we move forward with all the partners, it's not going to be where we have staff at that point. For 5 years, we got the resiliency officer, we're doing these things, so we have a timeline. I would say we haven't done our job as a board and an RRA, as we're moving forward, if we don't have it set up to be sustainable in 5 years. So I know that's a long ways out. I know that's not, what you want to hear on this, the easy, quick plan. But I think this is something that's going to continue growing, and, we've got to keep doing the work and come out with the plan in the end, before the grants run out and these extra capacity tools that we put together. Because myself and Jessica can't do it, the county can't do it, it's all the partners. But we have those partners really building capacity. Clerk, the tribes, the cities, the city of Lakeport, the city of Clerk, they see the value in this, and I know we don't have a clear path, but we got a path forward. We've just got to keep taking these incremental steps. So we got work to do.
Yeah, and I'll just add that the county did staff the RRA. And we built that capacity with NCO, which we did put an RFP out for. And that's how we got that partnership with them. So this is expanding their role with grants that we've already applied for, so that we don't have county staff running these meetings and facilitating. So that we have pulled that back because that wasn't the sustainable model. So it's expanding NCO's role, but we've already done the RFP. That's already happened. We did that over a year ago, and we'll be looking at other grants to support that as well. The reason it was pulled last week is because one of the partners had a question, and we weren't going to move this forward without 100% of the RRA partners and members and collaborative on board. And so we just paused, let them get more information, had a few more conversations, got everything worked out, cleared up last Friday, and had that vote, and we scheduled a second special meeting to make sure that we're moving together forward. So that's why it was pulled. And because we respect everybody's, we have never not had a unanimous vote at the RRA. And I think that's something that's really unique and special too, because of how we work together and respect everybody that comes to the table.
I see there's some public input, so I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add, or, so I see public input, so if, I was going to start with Zoom first, because the hands were up for a long time. So I see Betsy was on, but when she comes back on, I see 707-245-4550, if you can unmute, and we'll go ahead and give you your time and questions. And then Betsy, I'll follow with you after this phone number.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. This is Elizabeth Larson with Lake County News. I just had a couple quick questions. I'm curious about why these specific partners were chosen, NCO, Clerk, and Scotts Valley. That's my first question. My second question is, where are the 8 locations for Scotts Valley's biochar projects mentioned in the partnership agreement document? And do those include the Red Hills Road location, the location on county-owned land in Upper Lake that was approved a few weeks ago? And the last question is really more philosophical. There was mentioned in this presentation a climate plan that this group is supposed to prepare at some point. Is the county waiting on that plan before it actually works any assumptions or any planning into its own budget? Because the 400-page budget narrative that was approved as part of the budget document a few weeks ago has approximately 10 mentions of the word climate in it, and 9 of them are in the UC Cooperative Extension's budget. One's in the CAO's office mentioning the climate resilience officer. Anywhere else, I can't find climate projects or climate goals mentioned in any of the department heads' budget narratives. So is everybody just holding off until the RRA comes up with a plan, or, why is that? Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to take this up, or?
I'll do the best to answer the first question on the partners. The Lake County Risk Reduction Authority, since inception, has been meeting monthly, and we've had continued participation from the groups, Clerk, NCO, Scotts Valley Band, from day one, been participants to the meetings. Obviously, the tribal position was opened as we grew it, but these are folks that have been doing the work, the boots on the ground, that have been successful, getting grants, doing programs. The NCO obviously brought on board to help facilitate, and also take on other projects, the home hardening project, a pilot program that's running in Lake County. So these are groups that both participate in the Risk Reduction Authority, Lake County Fire Safe Count. They're always doing the work on the ground. It's not so much from the county standpoint, but it's the collaboration efforts together. So hopefully that will be able to answer that the initial question that you had, Elizabeth. As far as the rest of the questions, the budget stuff, I'll allow it to answer. But really, for the admin office, the climate resiliency officer, it was spoken earlier that not only work with all government agencies, but also internally with our directors, community development department, our general plan invitation and updates as those things need to happen, the climate action plan that needs to be done. I am probably saying it wrong as far as the plan. But those are all collaboration things that need to happen. I think we're in the early phases of it. We understand, where the climate's, where it's going. But this is early on work to really get that collaborative effort to not only engage all governments around the county and organizations doing the work, but also our own internal departments here at the county to be that communicator and facilitator as we move forward.
Yeah, and NCO once again answered the RFP. They were the only organization to answer the RFP, to be supportive of the Risk Reduction Authority. And we sent that RFP out twice. And they were the only group interested, and that was a year and a half ago. And so, we've been in contract with them for that support. We don't have a climate plan right now. We don't have any of those required plans that we need to in this day and age. And so this is how we get there. Did you want to speak a little bit more about it? No? Okay.
Well, and I also see Tom Jordan on from Scotts Valley, so I think pertaining to the question about where the biochar plants are going to be, maybe you can elaborate, Tom, if you can come off of...
Can I just...
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Again, there's a lot of detail in that agreement that we're approving, but from the Risk Reduction Authority's perspective, this is still conceptual. And the tribe could have identified those places, but, they still have to be vetted. They still have to, there's a lot of work that has to do to get those to the time when they're up and running. And that's why we have this facilitator funded through the grant, so that we can work collaboratively to make sure that this whole strategy that's being built out is going to be working for everybody. So, and Tom can speak more, but it's, we don't know what those identified places are yet. This is something that we're getting from the tribe, and that will be expanded on and worked on together.
Right. Tom, I don't know if you wanted to come off of mute, or if you had anything to add to that about that question. And if you're having trouble with unmuting, I can move on to the next question, and when you're ready, we can come back to it. So next, I've seen Betsy Kahn, you have your hand up. If you'd like to unmute, and we'll go ahead and hear what you have to ask or say. Okay. Okay. Tom, I seen you unmute, and I think Betsy just dropped off. She'll probably be calling back. So, Tom, if you wanted to go ahead and elaborate, feel free to go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Chairman or Supervisor Pyska has identified it correctly. We are at the stage of just locating and identifying locations. We have not vetted them. We have not talked to specific owners or organizations or agencies. So it would be very premature to identify all the sites. The two sites that we do know about are the site that we actually own at Red Hills, and the site at Upper Lake that we will be working with your board to move forward with. The other 6 sites, and possibly even more than that, as I say, have not been totally vetted to the point where we would be able to share with anybody at this point in time where those sites are.
It's more about the strategy, because it doesn't make sense to be hauling all this vegetation far distances or out of the county. And so having many sites within the county is going to make it a lot easier for this work to happen for these community projects, for all vegetation management projects. And, and so that's the goal, is to have a place close by where you can bring these things free of charge, drop them off. Again, it's conceptual. We know this is something that we need, but the details will come in the, as we move forward, whether or not we get this grant. This is the type of strategy that we need in our county.
All right. So I see next 707-281-6205. If you can unmute, we'll go ahead and take your statement.
Hi, this is Bart Levinson, and I'm going to very nervously and humbly try to say something here. Bruno, a lot of what you said, I actually agree with. I share some of your concerns. And I want to invite all of the supervisors to attend the Risk Reduction Authority meetings, as I have done, as Betsy has done, and ask the Risk Reduction Authority to explain more and push less. That what you're hearing today, I think, is the discomfort with how fast you're pushing this before giving all of us the information about what the project is. You're asking us to trust you. Well, I'm sure we all want to trust you, but we need the information about what it is, what resources you will need to accomplish what you're going to accomplish, and where will the 8 biochar, maybe more, facilities be throughout the county when the Riviera already rejected one of them. So just more transparency, more information, not so much rush. Let's all get there together. Thank you.
So I'm just going to say, again, this is a plan that is conceptual, that, we want to work towards implementing. At every step towards implementation, every project will have to go through a significant planning process, just as they all have. And, and that's going to be in the future. This is kind of how we get there. We need these things. We need this climate action plan. We know that there's going to be projects that come out of it. And that will be the next step, is getting those projects identified and then figuring out how to implement them and going through all the correct processes and channels. A lot of discussion happens in the RA and happens in our RA committees, which are all public, but due to the Brown Act, only 2 supervisors can be at those meetings. So that's why, Bart, all supervisors can't be in attendance. But there are representatives from both the cities, and I'm sure that they're reporting back to their supervisors if if they're not able to attend.
Did you have something?
I just want to address some of the timing comments as we're going here. A lot of these things that we are looking to go for, let's go the Jump Start program. That never existed before the first one we applied for. So it's not like something that's recurring every year. These are new things from the governor's budget that are being brought down, that are available for communities that have risk, have experienced disaster, and to need to have these plans. A lot of these things are new. They did not exist before. So, yep, we know ICDBG, when it's due every year as we move forward. These are recurring grants and opportunities going. A lot of this stuff is new. There's been a lot of back and forth collaboration. I would just say, when the Jump Start grant, a different grant came out, it was only to be in one area in the county. The conversation with them was, hey, can we make this the entire county instead of one specific area? So there's constant conversation going on as we're moving forward. It does. We wish we had a year out to really plan these things, but we don't. We're going to attempt to be successful this time. We may not be successful. So we hear the concerns. The next time, if we're not successful, we'll take those into consideration, public comment, as we're moving forward, and try and implement a little bit more. But there is a deadline that is due on this Friday. It needs to be in. We're attempting to get this in to see if we can be competitive on this grant and see if we can bring this collaboration that we've been building here to Lake County to everybody's attention of this is what we're doing. So to address timing issues, some of these things are brand new. And so, yep, if there's a round 2 or round 3, we'll continue those on. And there is. So the Jump Start program has been brought back. It's been put out to really on a tribal nation focus now. There was one tribe that was successful in the first round. Lake County was successful. But I know they're really pushing hard too with the outreach to the tribes of, hey, a climate resiliency officer. So we have 7 nations in the county. Hopefully, everybody's looking at it, because that is another part of the work that can be done directly with the RRA. So there may be another round as we're moving forward with this, but I just want to kind of address those timing things of, we're being forced into this, but a lot of this stuff is new work being created.
And you're so right, it is new. And when we had the discussions with the grant team, or from the Growth Council, they acknowledge this is new. And if things change, we don't we just have to be in contact with them. They're part of one of the grant requirements is we have peer-to-peer meetings quarterly with the other applicants to work through what's working, what's not working, what needs to change. And they've been very clear from the beginning, like, if some of these things don't work, it's okay. Well, we're going to work on it. We're going to work through this. And there's going to be another round in June. And, a lot's going to be learned from now until then about the whole application process and what they're even asking for. So, again, it's new. There's a lot to learn. But if we don't, that's not a reason to not push and try and go for an opportunity. That's what we're doing right now. These are the things that we know we need. Here is an opportunity. Let's make a hard push and try and get that funding so that we can get to work on it.
And so what I'll do is I'm going to call on Betsy, and then Natasha. After Betsy, I'll let you come up. Betsy, if you can unmute. There we go. I see.
Thank you very much, Chair Crandall and Board. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to this particular item. The activity of the Risk Reduction Authority and all of the planning that you're talking about, Supervisor Pyska and Supervisor Simon, those are all incredibly wonderful, laudable efforts, and I don't discount them at all. I will say that at this point, almost everything that you've done has been beneficial to an entity and hard for the community to get through that process that you're using. Tonight, you'll have the first public hearing on the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, but there are several key issues that you could.
We lost her.
Betsy, we lost you at you could.
So while she's reconnecting, the CWPP is tomorrow night, the 5th at 6 p.m. So Betsy, you were definitely right, it's happening this week, but it is tomorrow night, Wednesday night.
Yeah. And also, that's why there's a community engagement full-time position with NCO into this grant, so that, we can really get deep into the community and to bring information back and forth and to deepen that collaborative.
Betsy, are you still with us? If you can, no, I don't see. I think it came off. So while we're working on that, Natasha, if you'd like to come up.
Well, you keep on talking about collaboration with the community. We have had none from you or PG&E. And I want to say, you keep on acting like we're going to be involved in this, but, you haven't involved us so far, because we have been trying to reach out, trying to get someone's information, trying to get some help here. Now, I was wondering, is this wood biomass project, is that to basically haul away all the thousands of logs behind my house that PG&E has left and in the other communities? Because, they're littering our mountain with dead logs. And why should we have to pay for that?
You don't have to pay for that.
Okay, yeah, that would be part of the grant.
And so, again, what I need to know exactly what the complaint is from the property owner.
Yeah, and you pass it on. You pass it on. But you don't do anything, do you?
Okay, so another place, and we have this in the grant, is our municipal advisory councils. And so you are where your property is part of the Cloudberry Council. I go there every month. It's the third Thursday of the month at 6:30 at the Little Red Schoolhouse. There are all of these ways that the community can interact, but we have to get the information. And I think that's been the difficult part. I have not been getting a lot of information. I do drive down Wildcat. I drive down there all the time, and I'm not getting complaints. I see what's happening, but I have to hear directly from the property owner. And we did get PG&E to bring back their wood haul program. Mm-hmm. And if you have trees that they're not picking up, you just let me know, and I will make sure that they get picked up.
There's hundreds.
I know there are. I know there are.
Everybody's property, and it's still a fire hazard.
I know. And
That's not
they-
resiliency, that's not safety, and what about the climate? What about all these
Ma'am.
green trees?
Can you ask
cut down?
all your questions in the 3-minute time frame? Where are we at?
Okay, I just want to say the Mendocino Board of Supervisors did ask for a halt to the EVM, and you guys could too. You guys, because you guys, this is about climate? Wow, really? There's so many green trees being cut down right now on that mountain, on Mount Hannah. It is staggering, and they're nowhere near the lines, and you guys are talking about saving, the climate. You guys are letting a catastrophe go down.
I need to hear from those property owners, and then we'll work on it one
I'll get
at a
all
time.
of them. They'll all.
So I
sign.
want to give you this email. PG&E came a few weeks ago, and they
I
gave
have
us.
written everybody at PG&E several
All right.
times.
I think that
I'm
we're-
sorry. I have worn out PG&E. I have worn them out with no result.
Then you send the email to me, and I'll pass it along, and then we'll get the logs picked up. I've been working with property owners all year on that, and it's really effective. Their new email address for tree pickup is treesafety@pge.com, but you're welcome to send me an email, and I will pass it along.
Okay.
All right.
Talking about climate,
Thank you.
can start by saving some trees on the mountain.
All right. We're at your 3 minutes. Thank you. Next, I have Joan Moss, if you'd like to come up, Joan, and then I'll go back to Zoom. I have a couple more hands up.
Joan Moss, I have a suggestion for the committee that you make sure to mention that you welcome alternative opinions and you welcome the EPA Sulfur Bank people, Carter Jessup, and you welcome the USGS. Because I have a problem with the word methyl mercury. And the EPA, they refuse, this is
Joan,
a conversation that is
how does this-
climate-oriented.
Okay.
They have refused to mention the word methyl mercury in their 2021 update. And I pointed that out to Sarah. They now call it,
Okay, Joan, this is about
this is Lake County, Mr.
Joan, I understand, but
I'm
this
talking
isn't
about, I'm not
methyl mercury
saying-
right now. This is about,
There are, yes, it is.
it's about a grant.
Yes, it's a grant that involves climate problems, and the government itself is holding back on the facts. I work with Tom Zukanik. There were dead cats on the beach. I went down and I asked him and Pete Richardson, was there methyl mercury involved? Oh, no. And then when he doesn't work for UC Davis, I asked him, was there methyl mercury involved? He finally was able to say, yes. We have problems that are being ignored. And the USGS is saying untrue things and not wanting us to know where Mount Konocti is and where it is on the list. And that is a climate problem. That's one of the problems that I see, is that you're not talking about all of the problems in Lake County. You're not talking about the volcano. You're not talking about the climate, the EPA cover-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, and I urge you to attend the Risk Reduction Authority meetings, as other supervisors like myself and Supervisor Sabatier cannot attend, but we could read the minutes or watch the video if there is one. Joan, you're free to attend those meetings and give your insight. And the other thing I'll mention is, I just want to make sure that folks note this, that I'm not trying to stop you because I don't want to hear what you have to say. At times, if we stray off the subject, we have to keep it in the confines of what we're talking about. And the other thing is that we try to keep a 3-minute time frame. Sometimes we'll allow for a little more discussion at times, but sometimes it's not productive to have a back and forth. So that's why I wasn't trying to be rude to you. I was just trying to keep the time frame. And I understand that, but I was also just letting Miss Natasha know as well that that wasn't my intent. It was just to keep it on subject and keep us going. So next, I will move on to Terry Logston. I see your hand up. If you'd like to unmute, and please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Terry Logston. I'm the Environmental Director for the Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Indians, and I have been attending the Risk Reduction Authority meetings since its inception. I currently represent the tribe as one of the directors that went into effect, less than a year ago. And so If you had been attending, you would have heard me report at different times throughout the last several years. We had funding through, in a CAL FIRE grant proposal that Clerk had submitted, the Clear Lake Environmental Research Center, which would have funded identification of bioenergy, biomass locations, and a PG&E line study for the capacity. And that was taken out because CAL FIRE subsequently created an entire different department, a biomass utilization and workforce development division. And so our portion was taken out of that grant. We've been seeking funding to do this work for some time. So it shouldn't be a surprise if anyone has attended and followed the Risk Reduction Authority meetings. We don't have any specific locations identified yet. That's what we're hoping to do. It's more than just finding a location. There's many, many factors, and it will take funding to do that. We're very excited to be a partner in this grant through this whole project. It has been really heartening to hear the dedication of the partners and the other fellow directors talking about climate and this new Chief Climate Resiliency Officer and the opportunity that the county may have to hire an analyst to support that position and do more. And then the work that Clerk would be doing to implement this and track the CWPP. So thank you. Thank you for considering this grant application. I think that it will be an amazing award for the County of Lake and all of the partners. And if we don't get it this time, we will certainly, get it at the next round. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I see, Bart, you have your hand up. If you could keep it brief, I will allow you to unmute. And if you have a question or something of that nature, please let's keep it brief. As you've already spoke before, so just I understand you probably want to have a comment. So go ahead.
Thank you very much. The thing that I want to say is that there are not, at this time, as far as I know of, recordings of the meetings, and there can be, and it's something I've been trying to lobby for. I hope this meeting will help that materialize into something real, so that even you supervisors that can't attend the meetings can hear the recordings and simply hear for yourself what is said. In the meetings, we had many instances of the fire chiefs of the cities saying, well, we don't quite understand what you're trying to push for. And that's taken several more meetings to explain. And I hope the Risk Reduction Authority can hear that this has been being requested of you, more explanation, more upfront. And I say this with the greatest respect and appreciation for what you do.
All right. Thank you for that. And so I don't see any other hands up in the chambers or on Zoom, so I'll go ahead and close public input for this time frame. I don't know, Thomas, I seen you turn your camera on. Did you have something else to say before I completely close it? Okay. So I'll bring it back to the board while closing public input, and we'll go from there. Did you want to say something, Supervisor Simon?
I just want to address, the last comment about the fire. The fire chiefs all have a seat at the table. Complete communication. Obviously, they're the ones that do the work. They're the professionals. I will never say, hey, I know more than the fire chiefs. What we attempt to do is have open community collaboration conversations about how we move forward, what's needed in the community, is this a viable opportunity? And I think we have a good line of communication. At almost every meeting, unless there's a fire or disaster going on at that point, we have participation from our fire departments. They are there, they're committed, and we're working together. I don't recall any instances like that where there's not been communication. If something comes up, we try and talk through it, work through it, and understand how we're going to move forward. And like I said, some of this new stuff that's coming out, just making sure everybody has a voice is the most important thing. I think that's one thing I can pride the RRA on, is having that open to everybody to have comment, everyone to come and attend. We meet once a month. Now we're going to add the Lake County Fire Safe Council so we can do it regional. We're having these conversations. So if there is a problem in Cobb or in Middletown or in Clear Lake or in the Oaks, we're going to start moving those things around so we can talk regionally too, so we can get directly to those specific things. But, I just have to make the comment about the participation of our fire districts. It's so important that they're there because they're the ones with the long-term vision and do this. That's what they're trained for, to help guide us in these conversations if we do get off subject with too much government talk.
And so, Ms. Grant?
Mr. Chair, if you'd allow me, there is one legal clarification necessary in the resolution before your board adopts it. I'd just like to point what that is
Yes,
out.
please. Yes,
Oh,
please,
okay.
yeah.
The sentence I'm referring to is the Lake County Board of Supervisors hereby appoints the county administrative officer or designee as agent to conduct all negotiations, execute and submit all documents, including but not limited to applications, agreements, and payment requests that may be necessary for competition of the aforementioned capacity building activities. To be lawful, a delegation has to have specificity. It can't be just wide open discretion. So perhaps, I'm not quite sure what you're saying, but I did appreciate Supervisor Pyska's comments that a lot of it is still in the planning stages. So this level of discretion could pose a legal issue for you unless this is required by the state or the grant funder, because again, the language is more than generally what the law would allow.
This is a template from the application?
From the application. Then I would suggest that if you approve the resolution, that you include consensus, that this information come back to your board for at least some kind of validation or approval, because it's necessary for competition of the aforementioned capacity building activities, which aren't really described in the resolution. And it gives the CAO the ability to do everything without ever coming back to you. And that's a discretion that is unusual. Okay, so I think you do have to temper it. You've done that in the past when the state or feds, they want to be able to have the speed of movement, so I understand why they want to do it, but it does pose an issue for your board because it goes beyond what a legal delegation of authority normally encompasses.
So if the grant was awarded, we would have consensus or to come back?
Well, I think you would need to do it now to make it clear.
Okay.
So that you have a record if it can't be part of this, because if all you wanted was to have the county administrative officer to have the authority to effectuate the grant program as described in the partnership agreement, you could do that because the partnership agreement is part of what your board's approving today. So all of those parameters are established and the delegation of authority is specific. But to do this, which is just do anything, anywhere, anytime, anyhow, is a great deal more than that. And so I'm just raising it. If it has to be part of this document, then again, I would suggest that at least by consensus so that it's part of the record, that you make that delegation with specific direction to the CAO, that all of these things come back to your board for approval. That protects the county, certainly protects the CAO, and it won't get in the way of your resolution, though I do really wish the state and feds would quit insisting on these because they put the board and the person who's being delegated the authority in a precarious position legally.
I agree with making those changes that were suggested from Anita.
Yeah.
To make sure that we're doing those things, we can still move in the direction we would like to, but we need to be very clear. I completely agree with those amendments. I cannot put that in a motion. I will agree to that.
I agree.
Yeah, we're good. Supervisor Sabatier?
So when I mentioned last time that there was a part in the agreement that says Lake County will provide staff for the duration of the grant, and that I had some concerns of what exactly that means and what the capacity level is. This line was another one. Who exactly is the county administrator conducting negotiations, executing? Is it for this new group that is being created? And are they working on the behalf of that group outside of the scope of the Board of Supervisors? Like if we have NCO, if we have clerk, if we have Scotts Valley making a request, we're saying that our CAO will jump at that request and make those things happen. I'm trying to figure out who's in charge of directing the CAO when this is a partnership, and how does that work?
I don't know.
Again, the
Ms. Grant?
language is too vague to be able to answer those questions. Frankly, I haven't seen one from the state or federal government that is quite this broad in some time. Normally, it reflects back upon an agreement or an application, and the parameters are established in that document. And the person delegated with authority, well, your board knows this. You see those delegations all the time in documents for various grant applications. The delegation goes to submitting the grant, to filing any additional certifications, amendments to the grant agreement, and any funding requirements as evidenced by the application, those kind of things, because that's a more ministerial mechanism to do this. But this is, again, this is very general, just anywhere, anytime, anyhow, and it's a difficult burden with this verbiage. So again, if there is consensus, at least, that the resolution would be adopted with the board's understanding that none of these decisions, that the decisions by the CAO in this regard would be tentative ones, which would have to come back to your board for approval, you can do that. As I said, if the language could be changed, it would be better to give the authority to effectuate the grant program as described in the partnership agreement for the collaborative stakeholder structure of the Climate Safe Lake Project, because you've got that document here, so it establishes the parameters for you. You can do one or the other, but I would recommend that you do pick one.
And then Supervisor Simon, and then did you want to? That works. Yeah.
So, Anita, obviously we want to move forward with this today in any way. I agree with this, making those changes. And as we go through the application process, just like we done on the Jump Start program, these things are starting. These are issues that we see we need to work through. But I absolutely am in support, Anita, if you can help us solidify that language that protects the county, but also helps us move forward today. That's what I would like to do, because this is part of that conversation and partnership as we're moving forward. And somewhat of a pilot program is being developed for counties and other ones for the future. So, yeah, it may mean that we aren't successful, but I think we need to establish these boundaries as we move forward to do that, protect the county, and also allow us to move forward. So I'm in agreement, Anita. And if you will wordsmith the resolution and those types of things, or help us.
Well, as I said, if you're concerned that failing to follow the template will somehow jeopardize, the county can still effectuate some protection through consensus direction to the CAO that will temper that authority. But the authority needs to be constrained either by language directly in the resolution or by your direction on the record to the CAO today. And again, that's for the county's protection. Certainly, it's also for the CAO's protection, because acting without lawful authority is not a pretty place for an individual to be either. So you can do either one. I don't know the circumstances of the grant and whether this would be precarious to consideration. So I'm offering the alternatives. Your board can do either.
I don't think amending the resolution will jeopardize our chances.
Okay, well then, as I said, I would suggest granting the authority to effectuate the grant program as described in the partnership agreement for the collaborative stakeholder structure for the Climate Safe Lake Project.
Yeah.
If that's fine, then I would suggest number 3 be rewritten to just include that language, and I can provide that in writing for the final. But your board can approve it based on the oral amendment if you like.
Supervisor Sabati?
So a couple of things. One, I'll just kind of step back a little bit. I know in the presentation there was talking about difficulties of other regions moving forward and kind of leaving us behind and not really fitting within the coastal valley or the central valley or whatever other regions exist. And I know that we've been feeling like that for a long time. And I think that it's important that we force ourselves to break through into some of those regions. Because, for example, our water goes everywhere outside of Lake County, whether it's through Cache Creek, Puta Creek, or Eel River that goes into the Russian River. We have to use whatever means we have, what comes from our county, to be able to connect with other regions, to be able to enhance and increase our voice as we're asking for these types of climate change programs or grants. And I think we can make those things happen. I think it's good that we don't just say, oh, well, we're not part of a region, and that we are trying and attempting to get these things accomplished. But I hope that we continue to fight to become a part of those regions so that we have greater access to resources to be able to do the things that we need to do, because there is common uses of our resources here in the county that we should be able to be a part of some of these regions. Just, I think historically we have not been, and hopefully we can change those things. So I just kind of wanted to speak on that, and I totally understand the feeling, but I'm thinking of like the...
Potter Valley Project?
Oh, absolutely.
LEMSA?
And our last conversation with Supervisor Gore, when we met with both the Water Resources and Mendocino County and Sonoma County, climate change is a problem that we have to figure out what is a fair way to do this, not how can I grab what I need to make sure and save my community, because it's going to have to be across all imaginary lines on how we solve these things. So it's not a negative on what's here. It's a pushing for continuing to try and strive to become a part of these greater regions so that we can have larger access to larger amounts of resources to be able to do the things that we need to do.
Yeah, so we are doing that. We are inserting ourselves, but there are pilot projects that have been developed by the state and that we can't be a part of. And the LIDAR project is one example. There's also these woody biomass pilot programs that the governor's OPR office has set up. And it wasn't until we brought it to their attention that they realized that they excluded us. And I've got them coming up tomorrow for a 2-hour meeting tomorrow afternoon, because they feel terrible for not including us and putting us in this position. So we are doing that. And there are other coalitions that we're being added to, and the work is slow, but that is happening.
Okay. And then I'm not going to put words in Ms. Khan's mouth. I know that she got cut off. I think she's still on, but she mentioned something about specific agencies or something along the lines of talking about that. And I want to talk about NCO real quick, just to get an idea of what it is that we're doing here. We, as a board, approved funding to provide the RRA to go after and find a lead agency. You guys did an RFP and you found NCO as the lead agency. So my question is, why are we giving money to NCO rather than money to just the RRA? If you're the lead agency, at that point you work as the RRA and you get reimbursed from the RRA for the work that you do. At least that's my experience in working with JPA. So I'm kind of curious, is there a separation between NCO and the RRA, or are they not acting as the lead agency when they're singled out in this partnership? Or are they singled out, but they're the lead agency of the RRA? That to me is partially confusing, because we work with NCO with so many different things and different programs, and just kind of curious as to how that works, because I think that is another concern of typically that goes through the JPA and then it goes to the nonprofit rather than directly to the nonprofit around the JPA. And so kind of curious how this is all supposed to work.
Because it's the NCO staff. The RRA doesn't have staff, so we're engaged with NCO to provide staffing. The RRA isn't, so that's why. So we're not hiring our own staff with the RRA. It's, if you want to say it's going to go through the RRA to NCO, I mean, that's ultimately, in this agreement, the RRA is going to be making all of the decisions together as to where the funding goes. But NCO has stepped up to provide the staffing for this support. So that's why.
Well, just to, since we're about to go to a vote, I'm uncomfortable with the lack of a conversation at this level to be able to reach and figure out what the partnership looks like. I get it as far as Scotts Valley. They are truly a member of the RRA, have a seat at the table. Others have been seated at the table but are not members of the RRA and have been chosen out of the other many groups of people that show up there to be part of this partnership. I would have preferred an RFP to make sure we get the qualified and best fit so that we can move forward. And I think that also with the biochar, we're looking at 0 biochar, potentially up to 8. And I think that if we offered some competition of you get 2, you get 2, you get 2, or you get 4 and you get 4, if we did an RFP for that, that maybe we would have a greater group to work with to be able to accomplish our goals. And I just feel like I've been harping on the RFP and the transparency of it all and the fairness of it all, and I'm not sure that that is the case here, which makes me very uncomfortable. I also don't see the application, so I don't know what exactly is being promised other than what summaries I've seen. And I saying trust us is yes, but words on paper matter, especially when approving contracts and agreements. And I'm uncomfortable with what is in front of us.
And so I just have a couple questions, and I know they probably have been answered. And so, as mentioned, NCO is being funded from the county, some county fund source to help with RRA. And then this grant will also provide that type of funding as well, if we get it, of course.
There's going to be more positions
Okay.
hired.
And so, and if the grant is not, if we don't get the grant, then from there forward, we get to a point of just trying to kind of reform and then find another funding source of some nature?
For all the projects?
Yes. So what I mean is if this grant doesn't go through, we don't get accepted,
Yeah.
we will just kind of reform and come back together. And once another one comes up, we'll come with the same type of,
Yes.
yeah,
So-
it just improve what we didn't, what wasn't,
Right, so, yeah, if more capacity building grants come our way, then, yeah, we'll look to expand that capacity in the RRA. And if there's climate action grants that come our way, then that we'll be applying for that. And maybe it won't be so broad, it'll be maybe parsed out in smaller grants. We'll have to see. But we've identified the needs and we know what we need to do, and we'll figure out how to get there one way or the other.
And so I know one of the things when I was on the Risk Reduction Authority, one of the biggest struggles was getting the work done. It was very difficult. We didn't have, we did ask staff to do some things, but it wasn't amongst all of the things that we have to do in this county, regardless if it's a department, administration, it's always a difficult task to appropriate that type of work towards them. We know with all the different projects, when it comes to, I just kind of am dealing with this with water resources in a sense, where they're part of the Middle Creek Restoration Project, but they're also part of Middle Creek Flood Project, they're also part of the GSA, all of these other, tasks that are longstanding. And at times we get, as a county and in general, we get put in a position where, it's looked at like we we're not trying to do anything. And the fact of it is that they are trying to, and it's not just that. But I know that was a discussion yesterday that we had with Middle Creek. Was Tamaj Anderson he's from Robinson, working from Robinson, but he's from Scotts Valley. His comments were about having a monthly meeting because they wanted to be notified, but they don't understand the burden it takes on the staff to do it. That's why we had the discussion to say, hey, look, let's do a biannually. I found out that's the word for it. Biannually, every 2 months meeting, and then in the middle we have to make sure we conduct an update because it does get burdensome for the staff to conduct the information for that meeting, have the video, put it on YouTube, have the minutes, all of these other things every month. And so I get that, and I get the struggle too that Supervisor Sabatier, you brought up about the ad hoc Brown Act and us not knowing specific things. Just like when you brought forward the $800K for the cannabis funds to go into the Middle Creek project, and we asked the rest of the board members to, in essence, we had the presentation, but at the same time we're basically asking them to trust us as well, hoping, and we know that there's a plan for that as well. But I know the frustration. People ask me about fire and resiliency all the time, especially when it comes to RCRC, and I have to say, look, here's their numbers. Call them. They're entrenched in it. I'm not. I used to be on risk reduction, but it's changed since that time frame. During that time frame, I know you were an active member from the Cobb Area Council, so I know that heavily involved with that type of stuff. And I know another comment that Tamaj brought up was with the tribes, being at the table and having the opportunity to assist and be part of the projects rather than just kind of being brought in whenever it's either we need to ensure that we have this collaboration or whatever the case may be. But it's good to see that there are some tribes trying to at least carry some of the load here. And I think too that it gets sometimes burdensome, but at the same time, I understand the public's request and need to know more about some of the projects. But a lot of times, these are in the development stage, and it's almost like sometimes there's a want or desire to kill the project for whatever reason. I don't know if it's needing a specific champion or whoever's doing. I don't know what it is, but that happens quite frequently. I've noticed in the public, just like the project that Scotts Valley wanted for a lease. I know it was discussed that they wanted to eventually do a biochar, but they still have to go through the planning process. That still may be killed on its own, if that makes sense. And I hate using the word killed, but it might not go through. That happens, and so I think, and I'm just assuming here, but I think that the 8 spots that they're talking about, I would think, like for me, if I'm going to try to do a project as such, I'm going to try and put as many out there to try to hopefully land 1 or 2. And so I'm not sure if that's the case, but I just know in working on projects and ensuring that we get something going, that would happen. So I don't know. I'm just kind of recapping on everything that's been discussed. I appreciate questions. I appreciate the presentation. The questions were very important because County Council gave us some insight on how some of the information or the verbiage could be fixed so that way we have more protection on our part. And a lot of times when we're given these documents from the state or federal government, they always give you like a template to go from, and they know that we're going to church it up or whatever the case may be. So I'm glad we're doing that, ready to move forward. Sorry for kind of talking a lot, but I just wanted to kind of give my insight as to where I'm at with this. So, yeah. If there's no other discussion, someone can either offer the resolution. I think that's what it is, right? Yep.
Yeah.
I think there's both a resolution.
I'll offer the resolution as amended by County Council.
Resolution has been offered.
Supervisor Simon, can you hear me?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier,
Nay.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Crandall.
Aye.
Thank you.
And then I think there's B.
B is, I move that we designate a signatory for the partnership agreement to be the chair of the board. Is that what this is? Or do we,
It was said differently, but I think that fits.
Ms. Grant, I think you had
Okay, so moved.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. All right, so With that, I know we have another timed item, but we're going to take a short break. I know we're going to take a 5-minute break, so 11:25, we'll come back. Community development, I think we're going to be ready for the 6.5 item at that time. Thank you for